I can remember arriving in Thailand for the first time. I landed in Bangkok in 2012, and I couldn't wait to see what everything was about. It wasn't only my first time in Thailand, it was also my first time in Asia, and based on everything I was told about a friend who had been, it was meant to be the most amazing place ever. I hear it all the time in other stories. That sort of person that gets there and falls in love, and now nothing matters apart from Thailand. I can honestly say that I didn't have such strong feelings. I found Bangkok to be hot, sticky, dirty, and extremely chaotic. The pavements next to the roads, full of potholes, electric pylons blocking your path, and occasionally you'd be walking along and you'd stand on a loose paving stone. If it had been raining, water from underneath would splash up and ruin your clothes. The people were amazing, really friendly and kind, yet when you were in the part of Bangkok that you'd usually go to as a first-timer, it did feel like they were more interested in your money and getting as much out of you as possible. But they always did have a smile on their face. On the first time I was there, I did go to the bars, but I just didn't get the appeal. And I left Thailand not understanding what all the hype was about. I've heard it before, guys saying that leaving Thailand is the worst thing that could ever happen to you. And I thought in that moment that they were just exaggerating or it was a complete lie. Maybe it was a fabrication, and the reality behind a first trip to Thailand is not like that. But then I got on the plane to leave. I was feeling happy to be going home, yet the guy sat next to me seemed to be close to tears. He was from England like me. He was sat in the window seat and I was in the aisle, and he was just peering longingly out of the window of the plane. I sit down next to him and say hi, just out of courtesy. We were going to be sitting on the same plane next to each other for the next 12 hours, and he just turned to me and said, "It's true what they say. Leaving Thailand is worse than anything." There are guys out there then that seem to be like that, where Thailand becomes their world. He was no different. But I never expected, after that trip to Thailand, that Thailand would completely ruin my life. I was 50 years old, and that trip was meant to be a treat to myself, because, as seemed to be the same as the guy sat next to me on the return flight, I had been divorced 2 years ago. My only advice to my son, who was 16 at the time, was be very careful if you're going to get married, because you can work for years and end up with nothing. When I go back to England, I did feel like it was a wasted trip. I usually went to places closer to home, but the reason I chose Thailand was because it was meant to be a more affordable. And back then, even though it was such a long way and the flights were more expensive, you could still have a cheaper time in Thailand than you could in Italy, for example. And because I was divorced, that's what I was interested in. I was interested in trying to find somewhere cheap so that I didn't need to work until I dropped dead. I went to speak to my friend who raved about Thailand. Had I been doing Thailand wrong? He thought I was weird. He said that Thailand offered everything you could want, and more on top. So I just believed him and resigned myself to the fact that Thailand just wasn't going to be for me. Over the next 2 years, I didn't go anywhere. My friend went back to Thailand for another time, talking about how much he wants to live there, missing Thailand, but I don't know. On my first trip, I went to Bangkok, Pattaya, Phuket, and Chiang Mai, and I had no inclination that it would become my world, and that world would be ripped away from me. I never thought I would ever go back to Thailand. At 52 now, and I'm ready to completely give up. Up until the point when I got divorced, everything looked set for a good retirement. We had a paid-off detached house a few hours out of London in a nice setting. I had decent savings, and I thought it was our plan to move together to our favourite little beachside town in the Algarve in Portugal. We were going to buy ourselves a small villa, with a pool of course, and live the life we'd always dreamed of. Then the divorce happens. The house is sold, everything goes wrong, you stop working for a few years because you're so depressed, eating into your savings. The savings that had been reduced significantly because your ex-wife decided that she no longer had this same shared dream. Out of all the guys I've spoken to who have got divorced from their wives in England, It's no exaggeration to say that these divorces were brought on 99% of the time by the wife. That should give guys everything they need to know about married life in England, and I guess in the West in general. It's dead set stacked against you, and at 52, I've got not much of anything. I was looking for somewhere to just be able to have a retirement still that didn't involve me having to work until I dropped dead. I decided to go next and visit the Philippines that same year, 2 years after returning from Thailand. The Philippines was interesting. Manila, I don't know how to describe it. I struggled to come up with the right words to use. The traffic seemed worse than Bangkok. There didn't seem to have any public transportation trains like they had in Bangkok. The entertainment areas seemed to be smaller than in Bangkok and not as exciting, and the food was considerably worse. Yet you felt different when you were there. Kind of like most of the guys go to Thailand, yet the guys that really know go to the Philippines. And I met a guy who talked about that. I tried to force it on myself, and I left Manila and went to Angeles City, but that was nothing more than a complete dump. And I don't know if you can use this word on YouTube, but S-hole would only be the best way to describe it. It made Pattaya look like a world-class 5-star family resort in comparison. Didn't much enjoy my time there. Manila, though, was interesting. I enjoyed seeing it, seeing something different, but I left feeling like maybe I just had to resign myself to the fact I can't retire soon and I have to continue the daily grind. If I had to describe the Philippines as best as I could, this is after having years to think about it and visiting other countries in the region, but I would say it's for guys who still want that authentic Southeast Asian experience, yet very Americanized. The prices don't seem to reflect the current state of development. I found that weird, but then you have to understand that it is an island nation and it doesn't border any other countries. Leaving the Philippines, I wasn't sad either. But one thing I had found out over the years and since then is there don't seem to be the same kind of guys who say Philippines is this be-all and end-all kind of place like they do about Thailand. Some guys love it, yet there isn't this idolization going on that seems to happen in Thailand. And you have to think about things like that and start to think maybe I should just go and have another go in Thailand. Maybe it's going to take me extra time to finally understand what all the fuss is about. At this point, I had just enough money in the bank to buy a small house in England, which in hindsight would have been the best thing to do. But if I had that house, I wouldn't have much else left to live on, and I was 52, nearly 53. I'm not in a very happy place at this point in my life. That's an understatement, in fact. I'm extremely depressed and completely fed up with everything that has happened to me, and it's solely the fault of my ex-wife. Some people might say it's your fault that you didn't make her happy enough. It's not like she made me extremely happy all the time. I bet I was equally as fed up with her as she was with me. But I was pragmatic enough to understand that it would be better for both of us if we just stayed together and saw things through. But she didn't see it that way. I think she had some kind of grand vision that she was going to meet someone rich who would help her fulfill some of the dreams she had. Going on the Orient Express, sailing the Mediterranean in a fancy yacht, all the stuff she expected to be able to do at some point. Yet I'm just happy to be able to get to retirement and live in a small villa with a pool. What an ungrateful, life-ruining person she was. And I am sorry to talk about my ex-wife so much, but I'm just trying to call out to guys that are younger than me. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs until my voice goes hoarse. Be careful, please be careful. If you're not, you could find yourself like me, nearly 53 years old, so far away from where you thought you were going to be, just because of a lady that I married, who wasn't my dream girl. She didn't have these perfect looks, she was slightly overweight, yet it was a compromise because of my own flaws. Anyway, that's enough of that. The next year rolls around and work is becoming worse and worse. I feel for people in England, myself included. Wages just didn't seem to keep up with inflation or asset prices, and the house that we had to sell on a fire sale after the divorce, and I promise it's the last time I'll say anything about this, is now worth close to £1 million. Didn't sell it for anything close to that, but I'm starting to realise that if I want any form of retirement before I'm too old and decrepit to actually enjoy it, I need to make some serious sacrifices and some serious decisions about exactly what I'm going to do. I went that year back to Thailand. From my last time there, I didn't like it much, but it was cheaper, it was more affordable, and that was the only thing that I was thinking about. I also spent some time in Cambodia and Vietnam. This is in 2015. It amazes me that even today people are talking about how Cambodia or Vietnam are the new Thailand. They're not. People have been saying that for as long as I can remember, and that's all the way back in 2012. These places are the new Thailand. Yet still today, in 2025, people are saying these countries are the new Thailand. But they're not. They're very different. I hated Vietnam. Absolutely hated it. Cambodia was okay, but Thailand, at this point, is going to have to be it. Even when I was there in 2015, I didn't feel this rush of adrenaline when I was walking around the streets. I didn't feel overexcited when I went anywhere. It was okay. But it was affordable. And because of that, I started to think, as much as it's not my favourite place in the world, with a bit more money, I could probably see out my days there. It was on one of my final days there in 2015. That is when my ultimate downfall begins. This is where everything started to go wrong, because I was speaking to a guy in Bangkok who lived in Thailand. He was talking about how he retired early with his Thai wife, and they had a house in a part of the country called Isan. He said he spent most of his time there. He talked about how great it was, how he had this really nice piece of land, a pool, his dream games room, everything that I'd always wanted, like I expected to have when I retired to Portugal with my ex-wife. When he told me he spent 120 grand for everything, that was when I started to think Thailand could be the best compromise to allow me to somehow retire before I worked myself to death. I need to be very clear. This is 2015, and I am not a Thailand fanatic like you hear about in many stories. I'm not one of those guys who went to Thailand and thought he'd found another dimension. I didn't even know foreigners couldn't own land in Thailand at that point. I wasn't looking into it because it didn't excite me or interest me very much. I didn't know about problems that people had with Thai wives. I didn't know anything about that. I wasn't a Thailand lover. I was just a guy who was pragmatic enough to know that if I wanted to retire, I had a few choices, and the best choice appeared to be Thailand. Thailand was the best of an absolutely shocking situation. I still wasn't fully sold, not yet, but when I was speaking to that guy and he told me that £120,000 was an awful lot and you could build something nearly as good for nearly half the price and it would still be amazing, that's when I became sold. Rent, rent, rent. That seems to be the common theme going round a decade later. Today, all these guys who seem to watch videos and start thinking they're some kind of expert without even visiting the country. Listen to these guys. While their opinions might be based on some kind of false notion of Thailand, it is accurate. But while it's not too late for any of you guys listening, right now it is most definitely too late for me. But when I returned home after that time, I was starting to think that, I didn't mind Thailand. I wasn't in love with Thailand. Lots of things I didn't like about it, but I could probably move there now, go and look and find a bit of land in the countryside, build a small house and, just exist. When I was home, it was weird. I didn't feel this draw to Thailand like so many guys seem to talk about and explain, but I had a draw to retiring and not working. I was lonely, I missed company and affection, and it was then I joined a dating site based in Thailand, because if I was going to live in Thailand, I would want a partner from there. I started talking to one girl, 31, lived in Bangkok, and she said she was a bartender. When she told me that she was from Isan, I thought that was interesting, the same place as the guy I was speaking to last time went to build his house. It became quite a regular thing speaking to her, but no, I didn't have any sudden urge to just take extra holiday or anything. We spoke every few days, it became more regular, but for a year, I guess we were speaking together. 2016 comes around. Then summertime comes and I decide to go back to Thailand and start doing some research into the possibility of following in the footsteps of that guy who seemed to have it all understood and worked out. Go and live in the countryside, save a lot of money, build your dream house and live. I told that girl I was speaking to that I was going, and she seemed to be more excited to see me than I was to see her. But I met up with her on my first day in Bangkok. We did hit it off in person, and she was a breath of fresh air for me. I'd never had any experience with Thai girls before. I wasn't into the bar scene on past trips, but I went for a drink occasionally, but I wasn't interested in the girls that worked there. Because why would I be? But this girl didn't work in a bar, and I know there are going to be guys screaming at the scream. She was a bartender, 31, from Isan. Where else would she have worked apart from a bar? I just thought there must be a separation between a bar, where you go for a drink, and a bar, where you go for a drink and some more. If someone tells me they're a bartender, why would I assume that it wasn't just a place where you'd go for a drink? I'm not a Thailand fanatic. I have no interest in reading about Thailand. I have no interest in watching videos about Thailand. All I have interest in is retiring as soon as I can, so I don't know all the nuances that go along with that. I would find out later on that she worked in a bar. Not only that, but she worked in one for around 10 years. Obviously hadn't found any other idiot to whisk her away. But I didn't know anything about that because I had no interest in anything about that. People are probably going to call me an idiot for not doing research. I thought I did do research. On the visa you need, for example. I'm over 50, so put some money in the bank and I can get a retirement visa. How much does health insurance cost? Well, I know that, so yeah. That's all the research I did, things that would actually see me living in the country. I didn't plan or want to do a deep dive into the goings-on of the underworld of Thailand. Why would I? But I really did hit it off with this girl. She seemed to appreciate little things. My ex-wife never appreciated anything. I would surprise my ex-wife with a Christmas gift, a nice little bit of jewellery, £300 or £400 maybe, and she'd look at it and while she would say thank you, you could see her sort of turn around and, wish it was something else. It's as if she expected the bloody Cullinan diamond. But this girl was different from my ex-wife because after I kept seeing her for the first week on my holiday, I got her a little gift. I went into one of the Thai gold shops and bought her a very small bracelet. Might have only been £100, but she was so happy. Thank you so much. You're so nice to me. Everything she's saying like this, it felt good to be appreciated, I was never appreciated before, and that felt amazing. And it's only possible to work so hard, only possible to work to the best of your ability. And feeling appreciated, that's when I started to feel like Thailand was everything that everybody used to say about it. I wanted to be appreciated. I also wanted to be loved and respected. Perhaps I thought being appreciated seemed to indicate that love and respect was also there. Damn, I'm sounding insane. This girl, though, was amazing. I would later start to wonder why she never won an Oscar. She seemed to be very good at acting. Didn't know that yet. I did leave that year with a newfound love of life. I was starting to feel happy again, starting to feel like retirement was very close by. I felt like I had a new love, but this time a love who actually respected me, who actually liked being in my company, and who seemed to want to build a future. She appreciated little things, and she didn't seem to have unrealistic dreams that my ex-wife seemed to harbour. Here I am talking about my ex-wife again. I suppose I have some solace in the fact that she didn't meet that guy who was going to sweep her away. She's even more bitter than before. And then she has the audacity to call me up and say if only I had done things this way, or if only I had done things that way, I wouldn't have left you. The hell is she talking about? If only I had done things a different way. What does that even mean? I wanted her to do things in a different way. She didn't. Didn't mean I would leave her though. I really promise that is the last time I talk about her. But in 2016, I did decide that Thailand would be where I would have the absolute best life, as soon as possible, and I felt it was finally time to leave England behind forever. You often hear people asking how do guys find themselves in these positions. It's with years of desperation, and throughout these years of desperation, you're always reducing the amount of money you think you need to retire. £1 million was the goal. Retire with £1 million and a house. Then you hit 45 and you think, £1 million including the house, and we can still retire. Then your wife leaves you and you think, £500,000 I'll retire. You turn to drink, spend a lot of money just living, And when you get to 56 and you've got 300 grand, you think, I might not even make it to 60, so damn, I'm just going to go for it. That's how much I had. I never paid into a private pension. I didn't think I needed to because, anyway, I promised I wouldn't talk about that. All I knew about Thailand at this point was I was getting more serious with this girl, still speaking to her all the time, and I was never sending her any money. She said she was happy to continue working at her job. She enjoyed working as a bartender. A bartender, Jesus. But I think she saw in me someone who was so naive about Thailand that she wanted to take advantage of that naivety, even if that meant not getting any money out of me to start with. If she started asking for money, that would have sent huge alarm bells ringing, but she didn't. I also knew it was possible to have a nice house that may only use 30% of my money, and if I spent 10 grand a year for 20 years, if I lived that long, it all seemed to make sense. The guy who was my friend who loved Thailand couldn't believe it when I told him I was moving there soon. They never spoke about any of the pitfalls of Thailand with me. They never told me anything. Only the good points, but maybe they didn't know. But it was his plan to retire there at some point too. The end of 2016 was when I flew to Thailand on a one-way ticket, a retirement visa stamped in my passport. Or was it stuck in? I can't remember if I'm being honest, but it doesn't matter. When I landed and got to my hotel, I was so happy to be retired, so happy to not have to wake up early anymore, not have to do a job I didn't want to do anymore. I was happy, but I wasn't overly pumped to be in Thailand. It wasn't like the dream has come true, I'm finally where I want to be. I didn't feel like that. I just felt like I needed to be grateful to Thailand for allowing me to even have this opportunity in the first place. It was a positive that I had that girl who seemed to really appreciate me. She even came to the airport to meet me. She brought me a little gift, talking about how much she missed me, how much she can't wait to spend more time with me. At this point, I'm not 100% sure that I'm even going to live with her permanently. Not sure what I'm going to do. I thought I'd stay in Bangkok for a few months and take things slow. But she meets me at the airport, goes back to the hotel with me in the taxi, and she just kind of never leaves. I didn't invite her to stay with me permanently, but I didn't tell her not to. It kind of just happened. It started out innocently enough. She said she'd taken some time off work so she could spend some time with me, talking about how much she missed me, how much she was grateful that she'd met me, everything a guy could want to hear. I bet she knew I wasn't well versed in the realities of Thailand. After 2 weeks, I'm starting to dread the point when she has to start working again. She kept talking about it. Oh, I'm going to need to go back to work soon. And we're not going to have any money if I don't go back to work. Every time she'd talk about that, she would sigh like she didn't really want to go back to work. 2 days before she is due to go back to work, she's looking sad and I'm feeling like I could get very used to this. And I said to her, what would it take so you don't need to go back to work? It was as if she had an answer already well planned out. Well, I would need some money to be able to send for my son. I usually send 10,000 baht every month for my son and parents. I'd also need some money to be able to buy things I need. Don't need much, maybe 20,000 baht a month. If a girl says that to you in Thailand, or anything similar to that, don't just run. Sprint away as fast as you can. No matter how fantastic she is, no matter how much you feel she appreciates you, no matter how much you feel she loves you, sprint away. Unless you've got so much money that it doesn't matter. I didn't sprint away. She had me wrapped around her little finger, and when she said 20,000 baht a month, how somehow worked out that that was only 40% of my monthly budget, and she appreciates and loves me so much that she doesn't want to go back to work. I welcome ridicule. I mean, I don't just welcome ridicule, I deserve nothing more than the harshest and the most offensive abuse that could possibly be directed my way. What a complete idiot I was, but I just didn't know at the time. But it was settled though. She was going to be living with me permanently, and that's how it happened. It just happened. I was ready to leave Bangkok after 3 or 4 weeks. It's just too busy there and hectic. We went down to Hua Hin. That's when I started talking to her about my dreams to have a house in the countryside. Again, I wasn't aware that there was such a big phenomena in Thailand, guys going in and building houses with their wives' towns. I just heard that one guy talking about it, and it made me think about the house I lost in England. That was in the countryside, and that was my perfect place. I was never a city guy. Hua Hin was interesting. I didn't think much of the beach there. Seemed to be lots of retirees, but if I'm being true to myself, I was never really interested in mixing or speaking with other retirees or foreigners in Thailand. I wanted to keep myself to myself. And although I spoke to guys occasionally when you'd go out for a drink, maybe you're having a drink and they're having a drink as well, and you talk about Thailand and the little things, but I just wanted myself to myself in a peaceful place. If I think back to Hua Hin, that was the last point when I could have bailed from the relationship that was becoming so much more serious, so much faster than I'd ever thought possible. I thought it was genuine. It appeared to be, but I'm not one of those guys that lives and breathes Thailand and knows everything about everything. I think that's why people telling these stories is so important. For every guy who knows what happens in Thailand, there's going to be 10 other guys arriving who have no idea. I mean, I speak to people even today who say they're going to go to retire in Thailand. They've got a wonderful girlfriend and they're going to build a house there. Even with everything online today, there are still those guys that don't know. So you need to make sure you do. I was just diving head first. I was diving from the top diving board in the swimming pool, and as soon as I dived, time starts to slow down. And over the next few years, this dive was getting closer and closer to the pool below, yet the water was slowly being removed from the pool, so if I hit, it was already going to be over. We'd been in Hua Hin for around a week or so, and I was ready to leave there as well. I didn't want to go to Bangkok. I wasn't interested in going to Pattaya, so I just said, let's go to the countryside, see what land's available. I was at the ultimate point of happiness. I felt like dreams were starting to come true, retirement was here, and everything could only move in the right direction. So we went up to her village, which was in a province called Mukdahan, where she was from. She took me straight to meet her family. None of this that I hear on other stories. We're not married yet, so we can't see the family. None of that. She was going at it, and she introduced me to her parents as soon as we arrived. She was talking about how much she loved me and I loved her, and we're hoping to build a house in the countryside soon, and I was just going along with this. I mean, she was telling me that's what she was saying, but I didn't understand, so she could have been saying anything. I wanted a house. I wanted a house in the countryside, so that's just what was going on. I mean, I suppose it is weird how you find yourself in a place like that. A month prior to this, I'm still in England, not expecting to be moving in with this girl straight away, not expecting to be looking around the countryside straight away. But the family were nice, and she translated something her mother asked. You get married soon? She laughed, but her mother seemed deadly serious. I hadn't even thought about marriage at all. I saw another foreigner who lived close by. He seemed to be a nice guy, said he'd been living there for a while. He was in the same boat as me. He filled me in, though, with a lot of the uncomfortable truths that I was not yet aware of. He wasn't telling me these things because he thought I didn't know. He was just speaking candidly about it. Like, he offers me a beer, and while we're sitting outside his house, he started talking about how it's a shame that foreigners can't own land in Thailand. I looked at him like, what, can't they? No, this house belongs to my wife, he said. But she's great. She's been great all the time. She's never done wrong by me. And he went on to explain that his house and the other bits of land he'd bought, his car, his motorbike, everything was in his wife's name. That was another point when I could have run. Realised that doing something like this is probably the most insane thing anybody could do, but I didn't. I rationalised with myself that it was Thailand, and this girl who was with me now loved, respected and appreciated me a lot more than I did her, so I thought because of that, I was in the driving seat. We went to look around to see what the situation was like, and everyone seemed to have land for sale, but no one seemed to want to sell it unless they got a really good price. The guy who built the house said you needed to wait for someone who needs to sell it very quickly. Then you can get a good price. When I asked him how long that would take, he said it could be a day, a month or a year. There's no way to know, but you need to have cash ready available to snap up land as soon as someone desperately needs to sell it. If you see big signs on land saying it's for sale, usually these people are not in any hurry to sell, and they're happy to sit on it sometimes for up to 10 years when it's not selling, because one day they hope to get the price they want. Don't try and get involved with land like this, he said. Put the word out you're looking for land, and when someone wants to sell it, if you're being offered it, you can get it for the good price then, but only if they need to sell it. That advice he gave me at the time, I thought it can't be right. Turned out it was, and we didn't find any land when we were looking around. I mean, we did, but someone wanted 1 million baht for 1 rai. And this is a very rural setting. It wasn't like the land was good or anything, apart from it was a place to live. So we went and rented somewhere in town. That wasn't much of anything, but we kept putting the word around that we wanted some land and where we wanted it. And we were waiting for the time that someone was desperate enough to sell it for what it was actually worth. It was about 3 months later. We kept visiting her family, and they're always talking about marriage. You need to get married soon, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I found it quite annoying, if I'm telling you the truth. Well, I knew I was in Thailand, and Thailand had a different culture and a different way of doing things, and I respected that. I wasn't from Thailand. I came from a very different culture and a very different way of doing things. So I thought we should sort of meet in the middle somewhere. There should be a compromise. But it doesn't seem people in Thailand, at least people who live out in the sticks, have any understanding of the outside world or of just how different things are in the outside world. So the notion that you can come from somewhere different, to them, their thinking is a different version of what they already know. They're not aware it's a different version of absolutely everything. So I get why in Thailand people do strange things. Yet those very same people doing stupid things in Thailand are usually so forgiving of people who come to England not wanting to do things by the culture of England. Because in England, we know there are different cultures in the world. We know just how different things are. Yet in Thailand, at a place like this, they have no idea of how things are done anywhere apart from where they come from. After these 3 months, a bargain comes up. Someone was in need of money urgently, and they had 3 rai for sale. It wasn't suitable to build on in its current state, but they wanted 300,000 per rai, which I was told was a good price. I still felt it was expensive, and I wasn't prepared to pay that amount of money. It would have been close to 1 million still. I liked the land and I wanted it, but I didn't think they were going to sell it easily to anyone at that price anytime soon. Given the location we were in, I offered them 200,000 per rai. They immediately declined, but a month later, my wife got a call saying, if you can buy it in the next week, we'll take your price. That's how we got the land. Not that it would have made a damn bit of difference how much I paid for it, because it wouldn't have changed the final result. When we got the land, I agreed to get married. My compromise was I'm not paying sinsot. If you're prepared to accept that, I'll get married. And they agreed. I had not heard about sinsot until it was brought up when we were talking about getting married. She had a child, she's in her early 30s. What would I have been paying for? I get it's part of the culture and tradition, but I sort of think like, if you're a 20-year-old guy and you meet a 20-year-old girl, you're both brand new to the world, I get it then. But in any other situation, I don't. At this point, I don't think I'm moving towards ruination. I'm starting to feel the happiest I've felt for years. My new wife seems to be everything I've dreamed of in a girl. Night and day different to my ex-wife, who was always used to nag and complain and want, and my new wife wanted things, but it wasn't on the same level of want, and 20,000 baht a month was more than enough for her to be happy. She was so incredibly good at being exactly like I wanted her to be. I never told her how I wanted her to be. I'm not that type of person who thinks she's my property, absolutely not. I never said to her, do this, do that, or I like this, or I like that. I never did that, but she kind of had this sense and everything she did would have been the way I would have wanted her to do it. So that was how it was. We started getting the land ready to build on, and that took a few months before we could start. And when it was time to start the build, I went to speak to that other foreigner who had a house close by. When I found out that he no longer lived there, yet his wife and her parents did, how did I not think that could happen to me? I was so sure something like that wouldn't happen to me, because the way my wife was always behaving. Like I said, she deserves an Oscar. When I asked the guy's wife what had happened, she just said, he got too bored in the village and moved back to his country. And then I could start to see her eyes dart towards my wife's eyes, and then she said, oh, we're still together. And I left it at that. They're all bloody in on it together. You hear it all the time, guys reasoning with themselves that while they're spending way too much money now, as soon as the house is finished and as soon as they've moved in, they can start spending a lot less money because they've got the perfect house to keep them entertained. You know, the games room, the pool, the barbecue, the bar that they built outside. We're spending too much money now. We're going out to eat all the time. We're going to the beach occasionally. Because when the house is ready, That's when we can start to settle down and spend a lot less. That's exactly how I was thinking as well. I knew how much money I had to last me 20 years. I thought by that point I'd be in my mid-70s. I should have a pension, however much that would be, and I should be okay. If I got that far, which I didn't even expect. But during that time, when the house is being built, I'm spending 3 or 4 times the amount that I should be. I never tell my wife it's my intention, as soon as the house is built, that we will spend less money. I just thought that was obvious. It just seemed to make sense to me that that's what would be the case. I'd still be giving her the same. We might go to the beach occasionally, but for the most part, we're going to be spending time in the house. She could go around the village speaking to friends and go have her noodles and somtam, and I could just start living the quiet life. I didn't spend a fortune on the house. That got me thinking about the guy who said he spent $120,000 on his. It must have been palatial for that price. I spent about half of that, and a bit more on getting it set up the way I wanted it. I got a car and I bought 2 bikes, and a bicycle, and some other things, and I still had a decent amount of money left, about £170,000. At 57, with that amount of money, what could go wrong? Yes, everything, but how was I to know that that was going to happen? There was nothing to indicate that that would happen. And when we moved into the house, you feel like you're on cloud 9. You're finally there after all that effort and hard work. You've got what you think is the perfect wife, and you start living. Immediately, you do start to notice little differences in your life. Only little ones to start with, but mainly it's to do with your wife. Perhaps she's not being as affectionate as she used to be. Perhaps she's not laughing as hard at your jokes. Perhaps she's not as appreciative as she used to be. But it's only marginal. But I did notice that as soon as we moved into the house. The first month, though, it wasn't enough to send any alarm bells ringing. Because even after all that, I could still, run for the hills and escaped if I wanted to. I could have lost that and still maybe being okay. But it was a slow and gradual decline. Her son moved into the house. I didn't seem to have a problem with that. I know many guys who have instances of their family moving in. They're furious. But I just thought it was going to happen anyway, and we'd already discussed it when we were building. Her parents didn't move in. We discussed that, but when her son moved in, that changed her a lot. Little things that attracted you to her, she wasn't doing it anymore. But you still don't think anything of it. Throughout all this time, I've only been giving her 20,000 baht a month, and she never once asked for anything else. But true to form, as you'd expect, a month and a bit after we've been living in the house, then she starts asking me for more. How damn convenient. It's not a lot to start with. You've got to rationalise that still at this point it might only be an extra 10,000 baht, so that shouldn't be a problem. Maybe she wants to send her son to a better school. I get that, but she wanted me to pay for it. That was 40,000 baht a term, 2 terms a year. But then you reason with yourself, it's only 3 years left until he would leave school, so you rationalise that it must be, a one-off. Then someone else is having a fire sale for some land nearby, and you buy it quickly, thinking to yourself that if you do buy it for this great price, in the future you'll be able to sell it and even make a profit. I'm thinking we're going to be making money on this land, so I foolishly buy that, and then some more. Although it's in her name, it was our land. It was my decision when we would come to sell it. Why wouldn't I think that? We were partners, and I was the one providing the money for the land. I was the only one who had made money, so she wasn't in a position to be able to do that, to make money, so she should understand herself that listening to me would be the most prudent decision. What I'm trying to say, though, is you still think common sense and reason exists. But as soon as you move to rural Thailand, there is no such thing. Common sense and reason, I bet they don't even have words for those in the Thai language. I think there's always a point for every guy who has done similar things and made similar mistakes. God, there are so many of them. It's so sad, but there is a point where you sort of get to a point of no return, where you wouldn't have enough money left over to salvage your retirement. There is still that point where, although you've spent half your money, you could still do something to salvage some sort of retirement. It might not be very good, but as soon as you cross over that point, as soon as you bridge that, then all you can do is keep throwing money at the situation you're in, hoping and praying that it's going to turn out okay. I think that's what guys need to understand. There has to be a turning point. There has to be this tipping point where you say to yourself, if things get to such a level and go wrong to such a level and the money hits this figure before a certain point in time, bail. regardless of the consequences. Of course, I didn't do that because I'm an idiot, and most guys don't because they've not gone through the understanding of what it really is. You've gone into it, as I did, madly in love with this girl who you think loves you more than you love them, who they think really appreciates and is grateful for everything you've done for them. You think it's real because it feels real, yet it's not real, not even close to being real. But when you do that and you're at that point, you start to have these doubts. Bailing would mean having to work again. So that's when you keep throwing money at it, hoping amongst hope that whatever happens, you're going to be okay. And that's when the dive that you were taking off the diving board starts to speed up slightly. And as time starts to speed up again, you've already dove off that really high board. You can't change direction anymore because if you did, there's nothing to fix it. Yet even though you can't change direction, you can see the water draining ever so slowly out of the pool, and you know that as much as you hope something is going to work, you know you're going to hit the floor of the pool without any water to block you, and everything is going to be over. That is not anything but the perfect and honest truth. My tipping point was around the start of the pandemic. Somehow realizing that I spent far more money than I should have done, knowing that now I'm here at all costs, you start to double down. You agree to send her son to university, and that's going to cost you. You agree to buy that other bit of land behind the house so nobody else can. You agree to buy her a bit of gold so she can save it because it's her birthday. All these things you're doing that you wouldn't have done if you didn't have to, but you feel like you have to in order to maintain the status quo. Spending 3 times the amount of money you should be, and you can't stop, because if you did stop, you're fully aware at this point that your wife, who is slowly and gradually changing over the course of moving into the house, you realise that if you don't do these things, it's not going to work anyway. So you do them anyway. How crazy is it? But I mean, that's how it works. So throughout the pandemic, it's not like my wife is actively being nasty or actively being unkind, but she's not that person that I met. The person who quit her job just for me. The person who seemed to be so affectionate and loving and only wanted to please. Now she only wanted to please when she was getting something, when she was benefiting in some way, and how I managed to run out of all that money, I have no idea. Land. I thought we were investing in land that we could sell in the future for a profit. I honestly did. And when there was any sign that I was having some problems, I didn't have no money left, maybe 30 grand, I start saying, okay, I think we need to start seeing some return on the land. All this land we bought at fire sales when people really needed to sell it. If we hung on to it for 3 to 4 or 5 months trying to sell it, we should be able to make some money. But when I started to raise the point of selling this land that we bought, and yes, I bought too much, but if it didn't work out, things didn't go wrong, I expected to sell it. We probably could have made 2 million baht profit on it all. But when I mentioned selling it, she just looks at me like, we don't sell land. I don't want to sell land. I bought it, I kept telling her, but that didn't matter. She didn't want to sell it, and there's nothing I could do. When she wouldn't sell the land, that was a light bulb moment. I'd seen the slow decline of her behaviour across the years. At this point, we're getting on together, we're still doing things together, but she's nowhere near as enthusiastic as she used to be. We still go out for meals, and she doesn't talk about what a good time she has anymore. She doesn't say the same things anymore, and it's just like normal and boring. But instead of doing anything about it, trying to fix it with what little you've got left, you keep doubling down until it's too late. I kept begging her to sell the land, but she never would. I couldn't do anything about it, and that made me resent her. The only thing in my name was the car. Wasn't an expensive one though, and there's nowhere else I can move to in Thailand because now I don't have enough money anymore, and she doesn't want to sell the land. That's it then. Wait till the only money is gone and hope she will see sense. When I had about 20 grand left, I told her, I've got enough money to live for 3 months. We need to sell some land. That was when she looked at me like, what do you mean you've only got money for 3 months left? I've only got enough money for 3 months left. That's what I'm telling you. We need to sell the land. We need to get a good price for it so we can wait for 3 months. We might be able to stretch it to 4 or 5. We need to sell some. We had about 5 different plots of varying sizes. Scratch that, she had 5 different plots of various sizes. I thought we were banking on our future. And yes, I've already mentioned, please feel free to lay into me because I deserve it for being such a complete numpty. Instead of going to sell the land, she did what you'd expect. Change even more. Now she's not sleeping in the same room, she's angry all the time. How you'd tell me you no money? We money in land, I said. You know how they speak in Thailand. We money in land. That's for our future, she keeps saying. It's my bloody now, I kept saying to her, and then it all goes downhill from there. And that was the most sensible thing I did. Tell her I didn't have any money left when I still had a little bit left. So at least I could have done a bit of something. But when she refused to sell the land, saying it was our future, I think she meant it was her future and the future of her son. That was when I knew it was all over, and I'd just been another idiot foreigner who lost all his money. Why do we do this to ourselves? I don't know. But I lost all that after selling the car. I returned home with about 25 grand. So I suppose I didn't lose everything like lots of guys do, watching their money go to zero. If she agreed to sell just one piece of land, I would have continued to spend. But to her, that land was more important than me. Obviously it was. Yes, I am working again now, and I'm stuck. It's so easy to find yourself in this position. And as I said, I didn't know anything about Thailand. It's not like I'd spent years watching stories about how things can go wrong. I didn't even know about things like that because I wasn't interested. I wasn't some Thailand buff who thought watching stuff about Thailand was the be-all and end-all, like so many guys seem to do. I just didn't know. But now I do. It's the worst decision I ever made. Well, I don't think so. Marrying my ex-wife was the worst decision I ever made. But at the time, all you can do is see someone for who they are and treat them in a way that you feel they deserve. But when the going gets tough, you do need to understand that they're going to choose everything in front of you. Parents, children, the house that you've bought, the land that you've bought, the car that you've bought if it was in her name, the bike that you bought if it was in her name, the pet dog you bought, everything comes first. And you're just a necessary thing there to keep her from having to do any actual work. If you know that, you should be okay. I'll end it by saying I did know a guy who built a house in his wife's name, still there. He knew everything that could go wrong before he did it, and any amount of money that he was putting into it, as far as he was concerned, didn't exist anymore. As soon as he built that house, that money didn't exist anymore, and he didn't need the house in order to continue his life. As soon as he bought some land, that money didn't exist anymore. He didn't need it. The fact that he didn't need it to be able to live there meant that his wife didn't have any leverage or control over him, so they remained good together. But as soon as you need what you've built and it's in her name, as far as she's concerned, she needs it more than you. And if it means choosing what you've given to her, or you, she'll choose what you've given to her every single day of the week and twice on Sunday.